Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
All right, welcome to GSMC Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. It's the dynamic duo of your favorite host of podcasts, GSMC. It's Brice, it's me, Ethan. We're back at it again, talking all things fantasy football, which is not what we're actually talking about. We're talking football. I'm going to keep that in, though. We talked about fantasy football. You hopped on my show just a second ago. It was great. Good times. Yeah, we argued a point, and traded for Michael Thomas. He's not healthy right now, but, we'll figure it out. This was not homerism, by the way. This was not me being a homer. This was me making a conscious decision to play the long game. I'll see you all in the finals. That's what I'll say. And in fact, the one thing that I did say, which was kind of braggadocio, usually I'm not that type of guy, but I said if you're not 4-0 or 3-1, stay out of grown folks' business when the trade happened, when folks were questioning things. When folks start sending screenshots of the trades, like, what's this? What's happening here? What are we doing? I said, just stay out of grown folks' business. You're not a winner. Don't ask about it.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Brice? What's going on?
I'm doing all right, man. Just doing the same old, watching sports, chilling. Relaxing.
You gotta have some more enthusiasm than that. A lot of things are happening for Atlanta sports right now. Braves are going to the NLDS.
That's the best thing that we have going for us right now,
right?
And some people are getting a lot of bad feeling about those Marlins, that somehow we're going to blow it against those Marlins.
Listen,
and they're like considered the Cleveland Browns of baseball.
It's definitely something, but at the same time, let's keep in mind, the Braves, the last time they won, it was a shortened season. Maybe that mojo is back again.
Potentially.
Like, maybe it's right there for the taking, I don't think that, I don't know, baseball took a little bit of a weird break. Like, they could have kept going. But maybe we need to look at BetUS, see what the Braves title odds are. I'm sure they're like a plus. If they're like plus 400, we might have to jump on that, Brice.
We might, just for the game or the series.
Series, like not even just series. I mean, like get to the World Series and potentially win it.
I mean, if they won this round, they'd still have to go through the Cardinals or the Dodgers. So that's the series everybody's kind of stopping.
Well, yeah, they'd be the biggest. They'll be the biggest underdog for sure. But all it takes. You
make a lot of money on that underdog.
Yeah, like if.
That reminds me, did you hear about that one bet that was made on that Broncos-Jets game last week?
No.
A guy bet on the Jets, I believe, I want to say win. I forgot what the exact bet was, but basically if he won the bet, because he put $1,000 on the bet, he would have won $14K.
No, he lost it because the Jets lost? Mm-hmm. Well, that was his fault. You should have seen that one coming. Pretty sure the Jets were like 1-point favorites.
No, I think Broncos were still favorites in that game.
No way, because the line, when I checked the line, because I made a bet maybe like 14 minutes before the game started. That's when I did my parlay.
They said the Jets were a 1-point favorite?
Yeah, they were a 1-point favorite. Oh. And it was like it was like a +1 for the Broncos. They were underdogs just because, you would think that losing your starting quarterback, you're putting your third string guy that only played one game.
And then Sam Darnold's playing for the Jets. So it's like, they're healthy at that position.
Yeah, but when your best play is a 46-yard run from Sam Darnold. Actually, it was longer than that. I'm tripping. It was like, what, like 60-something yards?
No, I think it was 40. I think it was 40 because...
it felt longer.
Yeah, I think they were driving on that drive, but yeah. He didn't look too bad in that game, though, but,
No, but we're going to talk about some things about quarterbacking real soon. I guess we got to go ahead and get right into it. The first topic of the day, we have our first coach firing, so we're going to have to update our coach firing rankings soon. But the first one is gone, week 4. So like we kind of thought and then kind of backed off, but then kind of thought again, a coach was gone by week 4. So COVID doesn't matter. These coaches will get fired. The deadlines, and this is the biggest thing, coaches will get fired. So there should be no reason that people think the season is in jeopardy right now. No matter all the COVID stuff. We'll talk about it later. But the season cannot be in jeopardy if you're still firing coaches. That's how I feel. That is 100% how I feel. If you still care enough to fire your head coach for going 0-4 in the middle of a pandemic, the season will continue on as scheduled. Bill O'Brien is out, Brice. They have Romeo Crennel as the interim head coach so far, and that's what they're going to rock with for the rest of the season. So the Texans, the offseason was a little bit wonky, even before that, when they made Bill O'Brien the general manager, the GM, as well as the head coach, trades away Jadeveon Clowney, then trades away the other guy with dreads, DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not saying he has a thing against dudes with dreads, but no, I'm playing. But in reality, the biggest thing is the DeAndre Hopkins trade. They end up getting David Johnson, and coincidentally, they end up getting Brandon Cooks in another trade. They trade away both their first and second picks, essentially, to acquire those things. They have Larry Tunsil from Miami, and they're 0-4. Their offensive line is not great. Their defense has not been great. And Bill O'Brien gets the boot. Are you surprised that Bill O'Brien lost the head coaching gig along with the GM? I felt like, if anything, they would have removed him from GMing duties, but they let him go for coaching and GMing.
Well,
you know what, Doc Rivers, like when they said, okay, Doc, you can't be the GM anymore, and they just took it away from him, and then they let him just be the head coach. Or was that someone else?
No, that was Doc.
That was Doc. Okay.
I mean, that situation was a little bit different though, just because the Clippers were still winning, but they just had some questionable personnel decisions. Yeah. And everything, but I'm not surprised. And honestly, the reason why I'm not surprised they didn't just remove him from GM is just it's one of those things where it's just he's responsible for the roster. So if the roster sucks, he is responsible. He's also coaching them. So if they don't play well, he is still responsible. So if he's sucking in one of those areas, he's sucking in both of those areas. So he has to get out of there. So, I mean, I've been calling for this for a while. I just think that personally, I just feel like there was always a question if Houston was a well-coached team, because people around the league felt like Bill O'Brien wasn't a great coach, and he didn't have the greatest coaching staff, because there were so many flaws in Houston over the years. You could always see there were just flaws and things that were based off coaching. And one thing that's always saved them is they had the talent of a Deshaun Watson saving them, and DeAndre Hopkins. They had talent that from J.J. Watt and all those guys that were still able to win. Because, if you have talent, you can win and overcome some issues. But this year, I mean, you got to think about it. You lost Jale'Veon. You lost DeAndre Hopkins. You don't really have much of a running game. Offensive line's still a mess. Secondary still a mess. You're losing talent, and you're still not fixing the issues that have been plaguing you for the last few years. It's going to catch up to you. And I think the nail in the coffin was the fact that they lost to the 0-3 Minnesota Vikings, who you could even say was looking just as bad as the Houston Texans coming into this game. And then they still won. And so I think they know they're just if we're not better than Minnesota, then we're a bottom 3, bottom 4 team. We're probably going to be in the top 5 of the draft at this rate, and we need to make a change, because there's no point to continue this. I mean, the entire city of Houston wanted him out of there. Everybody, you knew all the Bill O'Brien people. Just they wanted him out of there. They wanted him gone. They feel like he just wasn't the right guy for the job. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins felt like he wasn't the greatest person in the world. He's one of those guys to me that you haven't heard a lot of players come out and say something, but I feel like a lot of guys in that locker room are just okay, I mean, he's the coach, will play. But you don't feel like there's a love for Bill O'Brien in that locker room. It's oh, we love him. It's just okay, I mean, he's the coach. It's kind of, different. Where like, you know, obviously in Atlanta with Dan Quinn, the players say that we love Dan Quinn even though they're struggling
last year, right?
Yeah, and they're still saying it this year. They're vocally saying it. You don't hear Houston Texans players like, "Oh, I love him. We just ain't doing our part." It's just a lot of numb quietness. Like, I mean, we just got to play better. I mean, that's as simple as I can put it to you. So, I mean,
that's pretty funny though, because when you think about it, a lot of this stuff, at the end of the day, especially the losing the way the Falcons do, I can see how the players are just like, you know what? You can't blame everything on the coach, right? There's just no way. The Falcons should not have no wins. They should have at least one. The Cowboys should be 0-4.
We should be 2-1 right now.
Yeah, realistically, you should be 2-1. That's the issue. That's the biggest problem. That's why people have like this weird, like, I feel like at the end of the day, because of the resume of Dan Quinn, he has to go because of what happened last year at the start. But we all know the Falcons have talent. We know that things can change, but you can't keep having this guy middle into the season all the time. Basically, nosediving yourself into mediocrity almost by default because you lose too many games you shouldn't lose. That's why people have Dan Quinn's head on the mantle right now. But I can understand as a player, you're like, look, we are out there on the field. We're the ones that are playing, and we're just not getting the job done. But, yeah, not a lot of people are coming out talking about Bill O'Brien as, you know, we want him there. J.J. Watt said, you know, obviously we need to do something different. We're 0-4, and whatever we're doing isn't working, and something needs to change, and something needs to be different. So that was pretty something. Sources told Diana Rossini that things were starting to fall apart 2 weeks ago with this coaching stuff. So it seems like there have been rumblings in the organization that didn't really break 100% news until recently now. But
and you know, a lot of these reporters have inside scoops that they just can't say anything until something happens. That's why sometimes when something happens and they're like, oh yeah, so for the last 6 weeks this has been going on, because they can't say anything like immediately sometimes. But yeah, I mean, if you think about all the head coaching positions that are potentially, or head coaches that are potentially in the hot seat outside of Dan Quinn, which teams really do you hear come out and say, we want him around, we love playing for him, we want to? I mean, think about Adam Gase. You have a lot of negativity coming from the players.
There's not a positive thing that's ever been said about Adam Gase. Exactly.
So it's like it's always time when you feel like the team knows it's time, or the team is like, hey, the owner, go to the owner, be like, hey, GM, hey, this isn't working. Well, I'm low on keep it on the low. We might need a new head coach next year. So, and I think Bill O'Brien, he was formerly the head coach at Penn State, I believe, right? Because he was there when the Joe Paterno thing happened, and then he became the new coach, and then he let Penn State back, and then he went to Houston. So, he played, and he was a college coach for us. So, I mean, really, I don't know where he would go from here. Would he go back to college potentially? I think he's an offensive guy too. So, could he get but offensive coordinator job potentially next year? Maybe a position coach team, because he has to start from the bottom back up again. That's usually how this goes, unless you're like a huge name and have tons of success. Like Jason Garrett, head coach of Dallas for like the past decade. Now as an offensive coordinator, has to work his way back up. Obviously, right now the Giants' offense isn't looking good, so he probably won't be a head coach anytime soon. But you got to work your way back up, but we don't know. Maybe Bill O'Brien might go back to college, because that may be his best chance to get another head coaching gig immediately, just because he might have to take a group of five, I don't know, a Tulsa or something.
No, I don't know.
And then say, okay, if he rebuilds them, gets to a Power 5, does better, now teams might want to call him, okay, we'll give you a second chance.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bunch of coaching turnover in the NFL this year. I think that a lot of teams are probably going to look to start anew. And even if we've seen it plenty of times, we saw what happened with the Bears with Lovie Smith, right? We saw what happened with Lovie Smith in Tampa Bay, with Jameis era, where they were 7-9 or let him go. Saw Jim Caldwell get let go. I wouldn't be surprised.
But Jim Caldwell did wrong though, because he went 10-6 and got let go.
Yeah, of course. Like, we've seen people get done wrong before and have better records. Then I wouldn't be surprised if Matt Patricia is thought of as somebody who, no matter what happens here, they're probably going to move on from him because things have not looked great under the Matt Patricia era as a whole. You know, I wouldn't be surprised, even though Justin Herbert looks solid, right? He looks really good as a rookie so far. You know, the jury's still out on Anthony Lynn. The jury's still out on Zach Taylor as a coach on the Bengals. Like if it was me, of course, I'd say, you know, give them another shot. You know, they're just now getting some pieces. You know, not everything's 100% perfect. There's been injuries and stuff, but that's not how everybody operates things, right? As we've seen. There's no telling that, especially right now after the loss the Bears got, or the loss that potentially that the Bears could get next week. They did lose this week. What's the overall feeling on Matt Nagy as a coach? Because they pulled Trubisky again, and this time it didn't work. So,
I mean, the only thing about that though is that they've started off 3-0. So now he has a 3-0 start. So if they end the season with a losing record, then it's just like, well, we started well and we ended horribly. So that, you know, those types of I don't want to say a mini collapse can really make a GM or an owner say, oh yeah, we got to make that move.
But we got to remember that sometimes teams start off hot or win games. That's just because a lot of other teams haven't figured it out themselves. So I guess what the middle weeks and the ending of the season will do more telling. But let's take a break and we'll come back talking about what happened on Sunday for the GSMC.
Football, basketball, and baseball are all back, and that means it's time to get down your bets. This is Brice and Ethan here to tell you about our favorite sports book, and that's BetUS. We only endorse one sports book, and that's BetUS.com. Why, you ask? BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the biz. You need to know that your sports book is coming with integrity and longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid.
That's right, Brice. Live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, entertainment, and all kinds of crazy prop bets and futures. They have it all. Nobody in this industry gives you bigger bonuses than BetUS. Go to BetUS.com now and fill out your information. It only takes about a minute. When you get to the How Did You Hear About Us page, you know, there's a box. Type in GSMC and get up to 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody can beat that. I bet at BetUS, and so should you. Join BetUS today, and don't forget to type in GSMC to get up to 150% bonus on your first deposit. That is BetUS.com, America's favorite sportsbook.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, Brice, we're back. GSMC Football Podcast. Fired coaches aside, you know, coach firings and all that are fun to talk about. But right now we're at a impasse. We're at a reprieve. We're at a time to take a break because there's just no way we're getting 2 coach firings within a week, right? It's only Monday that we're taping this, but there's just no way we're getting 2. So we can put that to bed for now. Let's bring in what happened on Sunday. So let's actually talk about that Texans game, right? Let's come back to it. Texans lose in pretty Texans lost fashion, would you not say? They lost to the Minnesota Vikings 23-31. What did you see in that game if you watched it? What did you get initially watching that game that made you feel like, you know, this was probably the beginning of the end for Bill O'Brien?
I mean, just like I said, Minnesota, outside of Dalvin Cook having a great start to the season, Kirk Cousins has looked like not the best version of Kirk Cousins to start the season. And he looked better in this game. And so, for me, you have that. You still have the same consistent issues you have. The offense is still struggled. You still have no running game. It's inevitable to look at this team and just say that there's nothing happening for this team. There's nothing that they're good at now. At least, like I said, previous years, one thing Houston could do is get after the passer because they had JJ, they had Marcellus, they had Clowney. Now you can't get after the passer, and then also on the offense end, you had a big play offense. You had an offense that could light it up. Kenny Stills and Will Fuller are great compliments to DeAndre Hopkins. Now you don't have that game-breaking receiver. Brandon Cooks is fine, but he's not a game-breaking receiver. So now it feels like you kind of have low-key complimentary receivers, all complimenting, but not a guy that you just know, yeah, he can make that big play when we need him to. And so now I'm not going to say, it's easy to guard them, but it's much easier to defend them. Because you probably feel confident playing against Houston now. Okay, we're just going to go one-on-one with all your receivers, and we'll hope for the best. And then that offensive line isn't good, so it's like, hey, we might not even have to wait that long to defend your receivers because you can't block us that long. And I just think with all that, it was just evident that Bill O'Brien had to go. And now we'll just have to see what happens because sometimes, the interim coaches come in and the team plays better. Because I'm sure the interim coach knows some things that weren't maybe working, and he'll probably try to come in there, Roman Carell, and make some changes to what they do on a week-to-week preparing basis to see if they can get better performance from their team. But they need to figure something out because this it just feels like this is a lost season, and you're not playing in a particularly a hard division, so to say, historically. So it looks even worse because you have the best quarterback in the AFC South. And yet, you are, by record...
You mean the best quarterback in the AFC South?
Yeah, the best quarterback in the AFC South. And by record, you are the worst team. And that just doesn't sit well.
No, yeah. Usually when you have the best quarterback, you expect better things and better outcomes. But I had a theory I said on my fantasy podcast that, Deshaun Watson's getting to that scary time where if quarterbacks don't get good protection at a certain point in the time in their career, they can actually start regressing because they pick up bad habits rather than being able to do what we think they're capable of. Deshaun Watson, people are mistaking running for his life as pocket presence on social media, and I don't really know which one is worse as far as he does have a good feel in the pocket. Like, that's the thing. He knows when he's under pressure, probably through a lot of practice of being under pressure. But that doesn't mean he's, taking a step in the pocket to make a throw. He's running so that way he doesn't, get blindsided at the side of his head and fumble the ball. Like, you see this with guys like Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz hasn't had good protection for 2 years now. And Carson Wentz is at a point where he feels like he has to play hero ball all the time. He has no protection. He's running out. He's running 16 yards from the line of scrimmage, basically, or where he started, then coming up trying to make a bullet pass instead of throwing it out of bounds. Deshaun isn't necessarily doing the same things, but he's getting to that area where, he's running out wide because he has no protection anyway, so his best help is the sideline. That's his best protection because no one's going to target the quarterback on the sideline. Because if he takes 1 foot step out and the guy hits him, that's an automatic flag. So the sideline is your friend as a quarterback. And if there's nothing there, you throw it away. But it's starting to build up that habit of you just don't trust the guys who are blocking for you up the middle. So you're not going to be standing there trying to make your reads. You're going to be doing stuff that you typically see from a guy who is like the athletic type who can throw it deep, but typically is not the best, overall surveyor of the field type stuff. And you saw that with guys like Sam Darnold on Thursday night, right? Thursday night, Sam Darnold was looking to run majority of the time. And that's probably because, he got cleaned up mid-game. People thought he wasn't coming back, and then he comes back. It's hard to think that he would sit in the pocket and be like, yeah, I trust these guys to help protect me so I can, check down and like see the field better and stuff like that. a lot of guys with good offensive lines don't have these type of issues where they're forcing the issue or they're trying to make too much out of nothing. So I think that's the biggest thing. I feel like Lamar would have similar issues if it weren't for their offensive line. It's good. And two, they use Lamar different than any other quarterback has ever been used in the NFL in history. So what do you think?
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's probably, there's some relevance to what you said. But that's why it's been so prevalent to get an offensive line, because you don't want those habits to develop. Remember what happened when the Houston Texans were first started as an expansion franchise, and the draft David Carr was their quarterback, and the offensive line was absolutely hot mess, and that basically ruined his career. I mean, he couldn't get protection, and then he just regressed completely. He like they said with Sam Darnold, he was seeing ghosts, and literally that messed him up, because you can develop bad habits from that. It's going to be to a point where when he gets an offensive line, he's like, oh, I don't have to after a second have to start running. I can actually just stand here and sit in the pocket. So, I think that's something that, I'm sure with the next coaching staff that comes in here, they're like, yeah, we need to get this straight. They have Laramie Tunsil. He's here's the thing. You got a Pro Bowl left tackle, and then the other four players are not good. It's easy to sit here and say he's not good either, because he's a part of the offensive line, but he can't block the other guys. He's only blocking his guys. And then that can sometimes affect his performance, because he knows I can't trust them to hold up their end. So, I think that's something that is prevalent. But I want to kind of get into something. I want to get into the Dallas-Cleveland game. Okay,
cool. We can do that. Go ahead. And
I just wanted to discuss first, Cleveland is 3-1. They bounced back from that first loss. Everybody thought the earth was falling and Baker Mayfield was a bust, but they're 3-1 now. They found their formula: run the ball with your two number one running backs, and then go play action to Jarvis, to Odell, to Hooper, and just put your playmakers in positions to make plays. And also, we came out of that game. Dallas is a horrific defensive team, and we need to not overlook what Dak has been doing. Obviously, he's been putting up great numbers and playing well, but at the same time, he is doing a lot of his work in garbage time when teams are playing soft zones, and he's just picking them apart that way. So I guess my question to you, Ethan, is what is your impression on the Browns? And especially, I know a lot of people in fantasy was happy because Odell had a good game, but he had a big game this week, and he seems like he's doing better in the offense that's also been implemented by Kevin Stefanski, and just overall, the Cleveland's just playing better as a team. And they're basically, obviously, if Pittsburgh, they didn't play this week, but if Pittsburgh ended up losing, they would have been tied for first in the division. But, they're 3-1, they're highly competitive, and they look good.
Well, this is how I feel about the Browns. They have won some games. Like, this is, the Browns are 3-1 now, right? So they're 3-1. Let's look at who Cleveland has played thus far in the season. We know they played the Cowboys, who they won. They did give up 38 points, but the Cowboys' offense usually, that 38 points was manufactured through garbage time, and the Cowboys' offense is pretty high-powered. They beat Washington, which I've said this a couple times now. The NFC East teams, if you beat them, it's a half a win, because they already beat themselves halfway through. So they have one win out of two NFC. They played two NFC East teams. They beat Washington, who was half a team. They beat the Cowboys, who was also half a team. Congratulations. They beat the Bengals, who, for all intents and purposes, aren't even a football team, right? But a win's a win, right? I was going to give Joe Burrow some credit later on in the podcast, so I'll give them credit for beating Joe Burrow. And they lost horribly to the Ravens. So maybe we just thought maybe we overrated how bad Cleveland was. But let's not overrate how good Cleveland is. We don't really know what Cleveland is or who they are. But what I will say is they're one of the best running teams in the NFL. They were projected to be that way. They have two starter quality running backs. One who just, of course, Nick Chubb is going to be sidelined for a while with some sort of MCL injury, but he did not tear it officially. So that means they do project him to come back. So it's probably like some sort of sprain. But I would not be surprised if this is like potentially some partial tear stuff, because it doesn't sound too good. They have Kareem Hunt, who basically didn't miss a beat. he hasn't missed a beat. He's looked solid to really good. He looked honestly like one of the best backs in the league yesterday against the Cowboys, but of course, like I said, it's the Cowboys.
And don't forget that third running back either, Johnson. He led them in rushing yesterday.
Yeah, Johnson led them in rushing.
Definitely, that offensive line can run block for sure.
Yeah, and it's one of the better run blocking offensive lines in the NFL, and that helps when you have Baker Mayfield, who went 19 for 30, 165, 2 touchdowns. Passer rating was a 60.6. He missed a lot of throws, like typically he does. That helps when you do miss a lot of throws, and you get a lot of help when Odell's the one carrying the ball in the backfield.
I mean, Odell got both his touchdowns off trick plays, the reverse and then the laundry pass.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing a lot of trickery out there to get the ball in his hands, but whatever works for them. At the same time, this Dallas defense is horrendous. I remember for the 7-9 Saints years where we'd have the worst defense in the league, and we should have been worse than what we were. But, we had Papa Brice out there saving the day, winning 7 games a year. That's his best Hall of Fame case right there, is the fact that he was able to pull some of those worst defense statistically of all times in 2 out of 3 seasons teams to 7-9. That's the Hall of Fame speech. I don't care about the Super Bowl sometimes. Those years, you couldn't tell me that people didn't. You saw this. Everyone in the NFC South just watched us let Breeze carried a whole state. Okay, a whole city. Regardless, it's done now.
Was that also the Pierre Thomas years?
Tail end of Pierre. I think Pierre left in 2013.
Okay.
That was the CJ Spiller. That was the Chris Ivory.
Oh, yes, sir. Chris Ivory.
Yeah, those were those years. The tail ends of the Darren Sproles. Those years. Pain. That's what it was. Regardless, Dak Prescott, we went 41 of 58. He was actually really good for all intents and purposes, but once again, just like last week, when it mattered most, when the last drive, basically the last drive of both games, he throws a pick. Situational football. He's still not great at it. Ezekiel Elliott has not been tearing the lid off running the ball,
and he's fumbled a lot.
Yeah, that too. He's fumbled a lot, but he's got involved in the passing game last game, so that might be something to look at for future wise. But other than that, they are their offense is really great, but they cannot win this way. So if you own them in fantasy, keep going. Fantasy-wise, this is going to be great for you. Because if you don't have any, ties to the Cowboys actually winning games, you're having a great time. If you have the Cowboys winning games, I don't know when the panic button is hit. I guess now, right? You have to hit the panic button.
Now they're not even leading the division. The Eagles are.
Yeah, so they're going to have to find a way to win some games, man. 100%.
You think it's going to come down to a Dallas-Eagles late game? NFC East on the line again? Both teams under 500?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Hey, Washington still got a chance.
That's the worst part about this, right? The Giants aren't out of this.
They're still in it, too. They're late game
The Giants
behind.
have not won a game. They're still not out. This is bad. The NFC East is horrific. And there was an infographic last night I saw on Sunday Night Football about the NFC East comparative to the AFC North.
It was the NFC West.
NFC West, yeah, NFC West. Where there's all teams in the NFC West is about 500 or above. And of course we know the NFC East has not.
They've only won 2 games, I believe, as a division all year?
Yes.
Yeah, 2 games. Dang.
This is bad. This is bad football. I thought 2 teams would at least make it out of this division. I don't know if one does.
I mean, they have to.
Technically, yes.
Unless Roger Goodell says the NFC East doesn't have to make the playoffs this year.
It should not have to be. And the thing is, though, anybody who does make it out of this division are going to be the team that beats somebody that's not supposed to be beaten. I
feel more confident if it was Philadelphia than Dallas. It just feels like Dallas go get the playoffs, and it's just like, oh boy.
Well, Dallas have not proven to be able to win games that matter. Going to last year, they haven't been able to win games that matter. We've seen this time and time again. But let's take a break and we'll come back talking more games.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
We're back, Brice. You know, we were talking about teams that don't know how to win games when it doesn't matter. Or when it does matter, Cowboys are in them. Let's continue on this trend here. The Cowboys are 1-3. We are looking at situations where football teams are not looking too great, right? We have some 1-3s. We have some 0-4s. We have some teams that have not won. The Falcons have yet to play. They still have not won. Houston is 0-4. Jacksonville is 1-3, but they're kind of spunky, right? They're one of those weird teams where, you know, I wouldn't count them out of any game as long as they are within a touchdown. They might be able to steal one. Los Angeles Chargers, they're 1-3, but last week's game,
they've been very competitive.
Yeah,
they're usually competitive.
They were beating the brakes off of Tom Brady in the first half. Or not in the first half. In the first quarter, things were bleak. Wasn't it like 28-0?
It was like 21-6, I believe.
Yeah, it was 21-6 or something like that. It was not looking great. Herbert looks good. Of course, you know, Denver's position. They lost their quarter. They've lost a lot of people. Cortland Sutton, their quarterback's hurt. The Giants are abysmal. The whole NFC East is a blanket. We'll talk about them. Detroit's 1-3. Minnesota's 1-3, but Minnesota could easily be 2-2. They are trying to make a little bit of a turnaround. The NFC South, for all intents and purposes, it was kind of doom and gloom in there for about the first 2 weeks, and now it's a lot of locked in 2-2s. Tampa Bay could have been 2-2 as well, but they got the win.
Yeah, and the guy gave a shout out to Carolina, man. They're
badly.
They lost Christian McCaffrey. Now they've won 2 straight.
We keep saying this, right? Like, as much as we wanted to say, Carol, what did we say in the beginning about NFC South? That these teams could have been competitive. We said that Carolina should be the worst team just based off of on paper. But, you know, everybody's super competitive in this division. Nobody exactly wants to lose in the NFC South. You're kind of like the SEC. Like, we're not just going to let you come in here and make us lose. Like, you're going to have to come earn this win.
So I guess since Tampa Bay has their colors very close to crimson and they're red, so I guess they're Alabama, huh? And then the Saints are LSU, and then the Falcons are Georgia, huh? And I don't know what the Panthers are going to be. I don't think we have any blue teams in it. Well, I mean, they could be Ole Miss.
Ole Miss lost this weekend, too. That's kind of funny. They lost to Arkansas.
Oh, yeah. No, that was Mississippi State, I think.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That's what I meant to say.
Ole Miss beat Kentucky. Oh, no, that's who Carolina can be. They can be Kentucky.
Okay. That's what you want to call it. But out of all these 1-3s and 0-4s, who do you have the most faith in to turn it around? And why is it the Falcons?
That's not. I honestly have no faith unless Dan Quinn makes that change. But all the teams, I guess the Chargers, because they easily could be 2-2 because if they didn't call that pass interference, they probably. Actually, they did beat the Bengals. Never mind. So they should be 1-3. But they've been very competitive. Herbert's played well. They went toe to toe with the defending champs, and since they went to overtime, you could technically say they could have beat Kansas City. So in terms of talent, they're still just as talented as any team in the league to me. It's just the Chargers, they just have this curse of just losing a lot of close games. They lose in just all these different fashions, and that's what's keeping them from getting over the edge. It's just they don't win games when they're in position to win games. And so if they can win some games, I think they could turn it around. I mean, obviously, the Raiders have came back to earth a little bit. They're 2-2. Denver, we know what their condition is. I mean, AFC overall hasn't been that strong necessarily outside of, the AFC North and then the AFC East. Outside of that, I mean, you can still kind of compete. It's still early. They just got to get a couple of wins reeled off, and I think they could bounce back and be, a team that still hangs around that 7th spot in the playoffs. Again, that's why I always keep talking about that 7th spot does give that opportunity where maybe legitimately you can go 8-8 or 7-9 and still get in with that spot. And the Chargers team is good enough to win 7 or 8 games. So if that would be something I would think would be reason why that they could hang around and potentially still bounce back and be competitive this year, because I think they're going to be in all their games. They have a lot of injuries right now. Derwin James is out. He has to get healthy. I believe another star defensive player they have is out right now. So when they start getting healthy and Herbert continues to play this well, I can see the Chargers continuing to pick up some wins, get a string of wins pulled together, and then be a very dangerous team, potentially a hot team late.
Word. So, how I feel about this team, I've said about early on in the season. So, it's not me jumping on some Joe Burrow bandwagon. I said this in the beginning. So, just keep this in mind. As I say this, I'm typing in Oregon football offensive line. There's a guy on their offensive line that is probably the best offensive lineman we're going to get since Quinn Nelson. Apparently. So if I type in offensive line for Oregon football, I believe it is right. So Penny Swell, that's who I think the Bengals are probably targeting in the draft because they have no offensive line. Their offensive line is abysmal. They can't protect Joe Burrow. I would like to see Joe Burrow tweak a hammy and sit out for this Ravens game because he doesn't deserve to go down this bad. But he's a tough guy, and he's going to go play. And that's why I like him, too. But here's the thing. The Bengals in a different universe is 3-1. They tied a game with the Eagles. The Eagles just didn't want to lose. So they ended up not attempting a field goal.
And they had 6 punts, I believe, in that overtime, in a 10-minute overtime.
Exactly. They just didn't want to lose that game. The Bengals are playing with house money. No one expects them to win anything this year. They could have and should have beat the Chargers. A ticky-tack offensive PI causes them to lose that game, essentially. If you want to not count the tie, they basically are 2-2. Or I'm sorry, 2-1-1. Right? They lost to the Browns. That game was over, even though the score says otherwise. But that game was basically over in the fourth quarter. Joe Burrow is good. They have no offensive line. Their defense is better than what we think they are. The Cincinnati Bengals defense is in the top 5 in pass defense. It's not horrific. Joe Mixon had his best game as a starter this year. I still feel like my take stands and it lives. What I said was I think they might be capable of going 7-9 and they would be really competitive outside of the division, which they have been. Outside of this division, they have been competitive. But in a division, they're going to struggle. Baltimore is coming this week. It's not going to be a fun game for Cincinnati. I would stay away from that game. Don't watch it. Hopefully Joe Burrow doesn't have to play in it, but I know that's probably not the case. So, that's my pick. I'm thinking that they're going to turn some stuff around just because I don't think they have a lot to turn around, but more so they just have to build more of a winning culture and be a little bit more competitive here. Who do you think, real quick, what team that is 3-1 or 4-0 that you think actually are not as good as we think they are?
Well, that's a good question. To kind of put me on the spot there, but I can handle the pressure. Potentially. You said 3-1 or 4-0, huh? I don't know, man. If it feels like every team right now. Oh, the Bears.
Yeah, that's probably the only correct answer, I guess.
Yeah, the Bears. They're 3-1, but I don't take them as a very serious contending team. They might and honestly end up just losing a couple of games straight. Now they're back where Detroit and Minnesota are. Green Bay just ends up running away with the division. I mean, they really didn't beat that great quality of opponents. Mm-hmm. I mean, they beat the Giants. They should have lost to the Falcons, clearly. I forgot if they beat week 1, but I believe that was a close game as well. And so, they beat Detroit. So they haven't even played the hardest schedule. At least they're not that bad, but they're not. I don't think they're at a Green Bay's level. I don't think they're at a Baltimore's level. I don't think they're at a Tampa's level. So I think that Bears are the team that aren't. They're the most fraudulent 3-1 team right now.
You know who's in the top 3 in point differential?
Who?
Indianapolis. They have a plus 47 point differential. They have scored 103 points and have only given up 56 points.
I mean, they have a very solid defense. I'm not surprised that they're playing that well. Outside of that week 1 performance, they've pretty much been the better team most of their games they played in.
Yeah, but their competition here. So they've just beat the Bears, right? They beat the Jets. Really, the Jets shouldn't have suited up. It was 36-7. They beat the Vikings 28-11, and they lost to the Jaguars 27-20. They have the Browns, the Bengals, the Lions, and the Ravens.
So they could easily go 2-2 during that stretch.
2-2. They could easily go 3-1.
Oh, you taking Cleveland?
They could probably beat Cleveland. This is probably the toughest game Cleveland has all year, besides the Ravens right now.
And the Steelers and
no, I mean as in like who they played so far.
Oh, okay.
Like this next coming game, this is not a cupcake game for the Browns. And if their defense, if we look at the rankings, right, statistics wise, I'm pretty sure that rush stats, all in all, are not there for the Colts. Wow, I don't know why I just went blocked out there. But if you look at defensive yards allowed, the most in the league, Seattle, Dallas, Minnesota, Miami, top 4. But if we move all the way down the line, the most yardage allowed has been, or the least yardage allowed, it's Pittsburgh, but they haven't played a game yet, right? Everybody else is down alongside Indianapolis, hasn't played a game yet. Indianapolis is basically has allowed the least amount of yardage as a unit. And if we go to rushing yards allowed, they've only allowed 308. They've done a tremendous job.
That's all you can really ask for.
Their defense has been solid, great defense. So a good defense that can stop the run against a team that traditionally wants to run the football old school wise is going to be an interesting matchup for Cleveland to see what they're capable of doing. And if you have to force Baker Mayfield, Oklahoma superstar, also, let's just keep this in mind here, right? Oklahoma has not looked the best as far as NFL prospects and actual football team over there in Oklahoma. Big 12 prospects are looking down. It's been a downturn. They lost 2 games in a row. Oklahoma did. They're out of the rankings. Kyler Murray hasn't looked as darling as he has in the first 2 weeks. Baker Mayfield never has looked like a darling since his rookie season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, what do you think about Spencer Rattler real quick? Like 30-second synopsis.
They said this man is a man. They thought he was going to be good just for social media clout. I mean, he's young. You know, I think we've expected everybody in Lincoln Riley's system to come out and destroy defenses in the Big 12 since nobody plays defense, and they put up points. But Oklahoma still has a bad defense, and I just think he's making some mistakes, and he's learning. And Oklahoma's just gonna have a fallback year this year. They've already lost 2 games; they're out of it. And so,
basically, right.
So I mean, the Big 12 probably won't have anybody representing them, which they have always had at least Oklahoma representing them every year. So I know this is gonna make some fans unhappy if the SEC gets a second team in there now.
I mean, did they really represent last year either? They got drought just.
Well, they've been destroyed in every game except the Georgia game. You can realistically say that was the most competitive team they've been in since they've been in the playoffs. Outside of that, they've been pretty much blown out. They score points, but defensively they're letting up almost 60. So
true. Well, let's take our final break and we'll come back and end the podcast talking all football, college or NFL. We're just going to go rapid fire. What are we feeling through these weeks of football? GSMC.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, Brice, we're back, and we're going to finish out the podcast talking about how we're feeling through 4 weeks of NFL and about 5 or 6 weeks, depending on who you follow, for college football. 2 weeks through the SEC and all that stuff, you know? Mm-hmm. So I'll start. Through 4 weeks of NFL football, here's what I'm feeling like across the board. I think we overrated the old men and how bad they are. Like, we've overrated how bad they were. And so far, the old dudes are looking like they're picking up the speed. And now we're about to see what really these teams are about. We're seeing what we expected to see from Tampa Bay as far as offensive firepower, even though they have some injuries. You know, O.J. Howard is hurt. Chris Godwin is still in and out of the lineup. I don't know if he comes back with the hamstring thing, because hamstrings are weird. The Saints are 2-2. They easily could have been, you know, in some degree, they could be 0-4. Same, they could be flip side. You know, a lot of things were one possession games and all that. But Drew Brees looked a lot better against Detroit. Tom Brady, even though with the picks and all, he probably threw his best balls in week 4. The old men are coming back. Listen, Phillip Rivers, he doesn't look horrible. He's, you know, he's doing his thing. Ben Roethlisberger, he hasn't played yet, but he hasn't looked like he's really missed a step as far as his level of play. The old guys are back. Who would have thought, you know, experience and being a quarterback for this long would, you know, help you weather through storms of adversity? Granted, the noodle arms are still possible to come back. So let's not pretend ourselves here. The problem is, can they last the whole season throwing well, and not the fact that we just didn't expect them to look this bad at the start. Because remember, Peyton Manning didn't look this bad at the start either, until it just fell off a cliff. Mm-hmm. So, are we sure? I mean, I'm pretty sure it'll fall off a cliff at some point, but will it happen gracefully? Or do you think that things are going to steadily just get better for these people?
I mean, I think we're going to get a steadiness throughout the entire season for the most part of all the guys. I don't think anybody's going to fall off a cliff. The only person, like I said, I'd be most worried about everybody is Drew, because there has been some evidence the last couple of years when y'all started hot. He's played really well, and then later in the season, he seems to kind of not be the same Drew at the end going into the playoffs, which could be one of the reasons why y'all don't play at well in the playoffs and offensively. But I mean, there was really no camp or anything this year, so he's pretty. I mean, he really didn't start really, playing till training camp, so that might have helped him stay fresh. You never know. And so he might be able to get through this whole season and be fine, even though people were questioning it already from the beginning of the season based off some bad performances. Because obviously, if you're an old guy in this league, an old quarterback, and your team loses, people are going to question, oh, it's because he's old. If you throw 3 picks, it's because he's old. Like, he didn't throw 3 picks when they were 25, but it did.
Right, we just saw Rippin just rip off 3 interceptions.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't really blame it on that. I mean, it's one thing if, like I said, Peyton, where it was just like, it was just wobbling in the air and struggling to get to the guy. Then you could clearly see, clearly. But they won the Super Bowl this year because they had a fantastic defense. I don't think any of those quarterbacks are at that point where they're just like, I can't get it 10 yards. It's hard for me. I think everybody's still going good. Honestly, the best thing a lot of these quarterbacks have is anticipation and accuracy, and that's something you can keep. Even if your arm strength does decide to diminish, because as long as you know where to locate the ball and you have great timing with your receivers, you can still be productive and everything. So I think the old guys are in pretty good shape to go forward and everything like that. But for me, what I've taken in terms of rapid fire hits, what I've seen from football, I'm going to college. I think that we're going to have a very colluded playoff this year in terms of I feel like there's going to be more upsets in college football this year than there has in previous years with a lot of top teams. I think there's even a chance that we may not have a single undefeated team, because I'm just seeing how teams are up and down week to week. One team loses here, they win here. You're seeing, like I said, the Big 12's beating each other all over the place. I feel like that's going to happen in the Pac-12. They're going to all beat each other. SEC, you see all the big games are literally at the front of this. Like the first 6 weeks, we'll probably know who's coming out of the SEC because they're all playing each other.
Yeah,
and so
it's a bloodbath.
Yeah, so I feel like with college ball, it's going to be very colluded, and it's just going to be a matter of just who as a committee, when you're making that decision, you have to sit there and think, who do we think is the best 4 teams in college football? We have to really make subjective, and then think about it. Not everybody's playing at the same time. Remember, the committee can see the SEC now. They can see ACC. They can see all these other teams now and make a judgment going into the season. But then you got to think about teams like the Pac-12 not playing until November. By that time, I mean, are they even playing enough games to be really heavily considered? They go 7-0 in conference. Well, the SEC, a guy could have went 8-1, and they went against better competition. So why should you get in over him? So it's going to be very colluded. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, but I definitely expect this to be a very hyped and fired up college football season. We still have some big matchups. Obviously, in college football next week we have Clemson and Miami. In Miami, if they were able to upset Clemson, would shake things up in the ACC. Now, is Miami going to come out and go to the playoff? So it's definitely going to be something great. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe potentially Michigan or Ohio State is on upset alert when they start their seasons, because they're just now practicing now. And every other team's like that too, but it's just who's more together, who's been around each other more. That's why I'm not surprised a team like LSU lost week 1. They were replacing their entire offense, and they've only had a month to train. Mm-hmm. I mean, what are you expecting, really? You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where I expect a lot of upsets, a lot of shakeups, and it's good. And there may be a chance at the end of the season where we are having even more debate than we've had in previous years about who the best 4 teams in college football are. Because I think everybody could have a loss, and it's just like, I mean, who do we really think is it? I mean, remember, we forget that the Pac-12 literally tried to get the committee to expand the playoff this year to 8 teams because of this type of season that they're having, because they know with their schedule and with them starting so late, and the way Pac-12 is, it is very unlikely the Pac-12 is going to get in starting that late in the season. So, I think it's just going to be very interesting to see what happens around the college football landscape. But I also expect this to be probably one of the funner seasons we've had in terms of just upsets, crazy games. Obviously, you're seeing a lot of scoring. Yeah, I think that's what I think is going to happen from the college football ranks, and what I've seen so far, what I think is going to happen going into the future. That
seems pretty fair. It's I think the ACC had a bit of a break. Most teams in the ACC, just put the tracker out there. If you care, Raging Cajuns are still 3-0. They didn't play last week. Have a game coming up on the 10th versus Coastal, who I think is Coastal Carolina. Yeah, it's the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. There we go. Raging Cajuns is still 23 in the nation. So, keep holding on, Raging Cajuns. You might still stay ranked, even if you do lose. College football is at a weird space to where, honestly, I don't even know where these teams are. There's only like 2 teams that I'm sure of what they are. Alabama and Clemson. I think everybody else is kind of up for grabs. I will say, though, Georgia, they did beat Auburn, but don't be shocked if they have to get into a slugfest with Florida. Florida looks really good.
Yeah, Kyle Trask looks really good. They think he could potentially make a Joe Burrow type of rise if he continues to play this way. Just, he's been lighting up defenses, and I think his tight end got 6 touchdowns.
That's another thing. Their tight end has been like otherworldly.
Yeah, so Florida is definitely, because what has kind of been the issue with Florida the last few years, quarterback offensively, they kind of were inconsistent. They always had the defense, but offensively was the issue. And now it looks like they're putting up points like it's nothing. And that would be a big issue for any team that's playing Florida this year, because they're going to come with that defense. But that offense gets going and they start clicking and scoring, Florida might end up coming out of the SEC East this year, and maybe even the SEC.
It would not be fun for you, as a Georgia fan.
It's going to be rough. But and then that's the thing. Again, Georgia plays Florida in like 3 weeks. So it's like, we'll know pretty soon here. It's not like, we got to wait till November. We got all this time. If it started on time and you got to wait 2 months, it's like, we're going to know here pretty soon. And then before that, we still got to play Alabama. So it's like if we were upset Alabama, it's like, we upset Alabama, we're the best team. And it's like, hey, Florida's still coming around the corner now. I don't think y'all can just... It's just going to be interesting. Of course, Nick Saban, Alabama team, though, is looking dominant. They destroyed Texas A&M. They destroyed Missouri last week. I mean, they're just doing what they're supposed to do. Mac Jones is still playing well. They still have 2 first-round receivers on Alabama, plus some up-and-coming guys, and Najee Harris. So I expect them to be just fine, and where they were last year, and just continue to play well. So, and they don't have to deal with an LSU this year. True. So,
I have one new hot take coming in after week 4. This Seattle offense cannot sustain the level of let Russ cook, as people like to say. I want that retired. I'm tired of hearing it on broadcasts, on pregame shows. It was cool to see it on Twitter. It's not fun to hear grown analysts, grown men, grown women sit here repeatedly say on national television, let Russ cook. No. Just say, let Russ throw the ball more. That's all. Like, we're done. We get it. It was fun to say, but they don't say it with any swagger. They don't have, like, even now, I feel like saying, let Russ cook, they don't even say it with the right cadence. Right? They just like, let Russ cook. No. Put it to bed. Anyway, letting Russ cook is going to come to a screeching halt soon. And it's not because they don't want him to. They have to slow these games down because their defense stinks. They have to run the ball. Their defense is abysmal. If it weren't for the fact that they're winning games, they basically be the Cowboys. Like, their pass defense is bad. They gave up 23 points to Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's not something to be proud about.
Yeah, they let 5 field goals. So if Miami could just convert 2 of those into touchdowns, they would be going close to 30.
Exactly. Like, Ryan Fitzpatrick had no touchdowns in that game, 2 interceptions. He threw for 315 yards in a season where, 300 yards aren't just everywhere and anywhere these days. Like, it's getting actually pretty difficult for quarterbacks to acquire, 300 yards passing. It's not great. Not great. Their rush defense is decent. But I don't think this is a safe thing to ask Russell Wilson to throw the ball like 45 times a game. He only threw it 34 times this week. And that's because they tried to get the running game a little bit more involved. They handed the ball to Chris Carson only 16 times. He had 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. So that's something. But I just don't think this is sustainable stuff. I honestly would be very worried. They play the Vikings, they play the Cardinals, the 49ers, the Bills, and the Rams. Rams defense is really good. The Bills defense is very good. The 49ers, they're good. They're down a lot of pieces, but they know how to play football. They're well coached. And the Cardinals, if the Cardinals can figure some things out offensively and get back on track, is what we saw the first 2 weeks, they can go toe to toe, as we can see. People aren't afraid to go toe to toe with this Seattle defense because it's not good. It's just they played the Falcons, who they do Falcon stuff. They didn't end up having enough to win. Play the Cowboys, who they win in a 1-score game. Patriots, they win, but basically the Patriots had one play to choose. They could have won the game, right? That could have been a loss. Cowboys game, you could say, could have been a tie or whatever the case may be. It could have gone to overtime, and they won the Dolphins game. I don't think you can sustainably win shootouts. Teams traditionally are not good down the stretch when it comes to winning in shootouts. Defense win championships, and if your defense is going to continue to play this bad, no matter how much you let Russ cook, he can't be Superman all the time. But yeah, that's my last take. So we can wrap it up there, unless you have something real quick to say.
No, man. I think that's good for today, man.
All right. Well, GSMC Football Podcast. We're wrapping it up right now, man. It's been a great podcast. I think it's one of our better ones in recent time. So don't forget, subscribe, rate, review the podcast. Tell us if you think it's been one of our better ones that we've done. That would be grateful. I would be grateful for that. Don't forget to follow us on social media, Facebook and Twitter, GSMC Football. Come interact, man. We have a good time. Ask us questions, all that. And the third, for Brice is Ethan. We're going to be signing out. We'll see you all next week, man. Peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.